So I've had the OnePlus 10 Pro stashed inside of my pants, my bag, various places really for the past month or so, using it as my personal handset in between other reviews. And I've got to say, I am enjoying using it. This right here is the cheapy model, a volcanic black version with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. I say cheapy, it'll still cost you 800 quid from OnePlus or Amazon, while 3 is also ranging it here in the UK. So it's certainly not cheapy, it's just cheaper than the Emerald Forest version, which doubles the storage and has extra memory stuffed inside. But the main question is this blower actually worth that sky-high price tag? Well, here's my full OnePlus 10 Pro review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, one of the things I really adore about the OnePlus 10 Pro is that matte finish. This thing stays smart no matter how much you fondle it. And that glass back is only defeated by the greasiest of fried chicken buckets. But even then, just a quick wipe down and it's once again box fresh. That camera bump, on the other hand, may be quite divisive. It is a bit of a big boy, but it doesn't stick out of the arse end too badly. The phone certainly doesn't rattle about if it's, just sat on a desk and you're poking the screen. And also, my fingers never got in the way of those lenses when I was snapping away, so it's not really an issue. I gotta say though, the black is a little bit plain, a little bit nondescript. I would definitely prefer the Emerald Forest model if it wasn't more bloody expensive. You've got Gorilla Glass 5 protection around back, so far completely scratch-free, even after a month of being bunged in backpacks and the rest. And up front, it's Gorilla Glass Victus. In various tests, this has proven more shatter-resistant than previous generations of Gorilla Glass. Gotta say though, Gorilla Glass Victus does tend to scratch up more easily, certainly in my own personal experience, but thankfully OnePlus has slapped a screen protector on top of the OnePlus 10 Pro, so that helps keep it from harm. And while OnePlus is downplaying the water resistance of the 10 Pro, I've taken this thing in the shower, in the bath, absolutely no worries, still in full working order. Although when that screen gets even slightly moist, it's just completely unresponsive, so that's not ideal. So overall, as far as the design goes, bugger all to complain about here really, other than the fact that it's so ruddy massive. I definitely personally preferred the pleasingly compact Xiaomi 12, that was just a better fit for my stubby goblin-like hands. Now, the software, and of course it's the latest Android 12 here, as you'd expect from an £800 blower, with that OxygenOS 12 launcher slathered on top. And this comes complete with 3 years of OS updates, 4 years of security updates, thus matching some of OnePlus's biggest rivals like Samsung. And I gotta say, there's not a huge number of particularly vital updates in version 12 of OxygenOS, but the upgraded shelf is easier to access now and a bit more customizable. And personally, I still prefer the likes of the control center as found on rivals from the likes of Xiaomi, which allows you to quickly toggle all kinds of different smartphone and smart home features just with a quick drag and poke. There's plenty of potential for customization in OxygenOS, including an excellent range of always-on display options, but some of the new Android 12 features such as base and UI colors on your current wallpaper have been scrapped. Thankfully, most of the other great Android 12 features are still present and correct, such as the fact that you're actually warned whenever an app starts using your camera or your microphone. You've also got the ability to kill switch them with just a quick poke if you want to. And that in-display fingerprint sensor is just your basic 2D optical effort, but I've had bugger all problems with it really. As long as my hands have been completely dry, if you go at the bogs, you wash your hands, you've got to make sure you dry them properly, otherwise this fingerprint sensor ain't happy. A quick rub down on your pants ain't gonna cut it. And as mentioned, this black model comes packing 128 gigs of storage. So far, I'm not even close to filling it up despite shooting loads of photo and video. And that's just as well really, because there's sod all micro SD memory card support as usual with premium blowers. Now the OnePlus 10 Pro's 6.7-inch AMOLED display is a proper stunner, but then so is the screen on pretty much every other phone at this price point. All of those boxes are ticked as expected. You've got the Quad HD Plus resolution, nice wide viewing angles, you've got HDR support with natural look and contrast, you've got a refresh rate that dynamically shifts from 1 Hz all the way up to 120 Hz. That said, OnePlus has at least tried to evolve the screen technology a little bit by chucking in a couple of fresh new features such as the AI adaptive brightness. This actually evolves over time to learn your own personal preferred brightness level, whether you're outdoors or in more ambient light, based on how much you manually tweak that brightness slider. Gotta say though, it's a feature that I didn't ever need because I never tweaked the brightness slider manually. I just left it on the auto brightness and it just seemed to do exactly what I wanted to do all of the time, which was great. Also updated is the dual color calibration, which produces richer looking visuals at very low brightness, so colors really shine compared with most rivals. Here's a side by side with the older 9 Plus as an example, and you can see those vibrant tones are a lot more obvious when the screen brightness is almost on its lowest level. So the OnePlus 10 Pro is ideal for anyone who watches a lot of stuff on their smartphone in bed or down the cinema when you get dragged there by the kids for the latest Harry Potter type guff. The stereo speaker setup is not one of the absolute best around, but it's perfectly fine for gaming or enjoying some YouTube, even when there's lots of noise floating about. And of course, as usual, again with premium blowers, no headphone jack here on the OnePlus 10 Pro, but the Bluetooth 5.2 smart's absolutely dependable at all times. I've had zero issues with those the past few weeks, even when I've been moseying about in central London. The audio hasn't started to cut out or judder or anything like that, no worries. So on the performance side, the OnePlus 10 Pro powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, just like most, again, flagship rivals. And I found that the everyday experience has been silky smooth, as you would expect. And if you are a gamer, well, great news, the OnePlus 10 Pro will basically smash its way through any Android title you throw its way, even the mighty Genshin Impact on maxed out detail settings. You can play that bad boy for hours at a time, because OnePlus has upgraded the cooling system here for the 10 Pro over previous generations. It's a new 5-layer system, which includes a vapor chamber, copper foil, graphene layers, all of the big sexy tech, and it definitely deserves a shiny gold star because it does its job really very well indeed. Seriously, it doesn't matter what you're playing, you can do it for hours at a time, and this thing will get a little bit toasty around the back end, but certainly not to a degree where your fingers start to singe, and certainly not to a degree where the performance itself actually suffers. Screen responsiveness is perfect for online multiplayer shenanigans as well, no issues there. Nice spacious display for seeing exactly what's going on, and that tiny little selfie cam getting in the way, and it doesn't really get in the way at all, to be fair. And you've also now got a very similar gaming toolbox setup to ColorOS, which is fine by me as it serves up plenty of useful tools, it's nice and compact, it's fully customizable, and it's easy to understand. Now, one issue which I've had with quite a lot of previous OnePlus flagships, and something which makes me a little bit more hesitant to recommend them compared with some rivals, is the less than stellar battery life. But thankfully that is a problem which has been kicked square in the crotch by the OnePlus 10 Pro. Because you see, the 10 Pro swaggers onto the scene with a mighty 5,000 milliamp battery. That's a big bump up from the previous generation. I think it's the biggest battery that OnePlus has ever chucked inside of one of its flagship smartphones, as far as my beer-addled old brain can remember anyway. And this definitely does the job absolutely fine. I usually end a day with around sort of 20 to 25% battery life remaining. Only once in the past month has this thing come close to running completely dry. It was on the last remaining dregs, but that was with over 7 hours of screen on time, including a fair bit of camera play. You got Oppo's dual cell Super VOOC battery charging tech packed inside of here as well. So it's about 80 watt fast charging. Plug it in with the cable, it'll fully charge in about half an hour or so. So not one of the, again, absolute best out there. For instance, Realme just released a new smartphone with 150 watt wired charging, but you know what, plug it in for 5 or 10 minutes, you'll get a good chunk of battery life. If you are running close to dry, should see you through. And on top of that, you've also got 50 watt wireless charging support as well, AirVOOC I believe they call it, so again, you're fully covered in all areas. So let's finish up this OnePlus 10 Pro review with a squint at the camera tech, and the primary sensor here is that 48 megapixel Sony IMX789 with optical image stabilization. And no, don't worry, you're not suffering from some terrible brain injury or anything. That is indeed the exact same camera sensor technology packed inside of last year's OnePlus 9 Pro. And sure, that ain't a bad thing by any means. The OnePlus 10 Pro can once again pump out good looking pics at most times of the day. Like the Oppo Find X5 phones, I found this handset did a fine job of replicating tones to produce a natural looking pic. Unsurprising perhaps, as Hasselblad was involved in some background fine tuning for both Oppo and OnePlus. Pics are packed with finer detail, and HDR situations are deftly handled. Some of my favourite test pics for this thing were captured against a bright sky with a natural blue shining through. The OnePlus 10 Pro also does a bang-up job with living subjects, as long as the lighting ain't too bad. Portrait mode occasionally flattens wild hair a little too enthusiastically, but otherwise it's great stuff. In softer light, I did get mixed results when there is sharp contrast, with some obvious flaring, and blur when your subject is moving a bit. But at least my pics weren't grainy, and that night mode does help to brighten things up a little with a very short capture time. The OnePlus 10 Pro also serves up those Hasselblad master style filters as found in the Find X5 Pro. And I quite like the Radiance one for outdoors use as it makes everything look like some weird surreal cartoon, but otherwise take them or leave them. Now, one of the new tools crammed inside of the OnePlus 10 Pro is the ability to shoot 10-bit HEIF pics, which may interest some more serious photographers out there. And likewise, Hasselblad's Pro mode has been expanded and improved, so you now got access to all 3 cameras. You can also shoot in RAW+. But to be honest, if you're the kind of person who generally just leaves their smartphone camera in full-on auto mode and just uses it to snap pics of family, friends, food, whatever, then you're not really going to get anything new out of the OnePlus 10 Pro that you couldn't get out of previous flagships like the OnePlus 9 Pro. I say nothing new, although the 50 megapixel ultra-wide angle shooter now comes with a 150-degree lens, which serves up a fresh fisheye mode, the same as the Realme GT2 Pro. This once again feels like a complete gimmick that people might play around with for 5 minutes and then swiftly forget about, but it's there if you want it. If you're shooting regular wide-angle pics, then unfortunately you won't get the same reliable color reproduction as that primary sensor, especially if you're snapping away indoors. And last up, there's an 8 megapixel telephoto lens with optical image stabilization. This is capable of a 3.3 times optical zoom, again the same as the 9 Pro. And while the results aren't as impressive as some rivals out there, especially if you pinch in above the 10 times zoom level, I did make good use of that lens to snap the cats and the sprog, so I didn't disturb them in the process. Home movie fans can capture 4K resolution Ultra HD video at up to 120 frames per second for crazy hyper-realistic results, although personally I kept it at 30 or 60 frames per second as you get smoother stabilization. Visuals are sharp, again with quite natural color output, although evening results aren't as impressive as the Find X5 series. Audio is cleanly picked up from all areas without much interference at all from the wind. And yeah, you can once again swap to the other lenses if needed, again with respectable enough results. And last up, one of the actual hardware changes for the OnePlus 10 Pro's camera is that 32MP IMX615 selfie shooter. This is perfectly okay, don't expect natural skin tones or particularly good HDR performance, but even in ambient light you won't see much grain at least. So that's what I reckon of the OnePlus 10 Pro 1 month after launch. I gotta say, I have enjoyed using it as my personal smartphone. There's very little to complain about really beyond the usual bugbears such as no headphone jack, no expandable storage, etc. However, definitely bear in mind that there are more affordable alternatives out there, such as for instance the Realme GT2 and the Realme GT2 Pro, which again offer strong gaming performance, great battery life, an all-round solid smartphone experience, but for a lot less cash. And personally, I gotta say, I preferred the Xiaomi 12, which offers all of the best bits packed inside of the OnePlus 10 Pro, but in a more compact form factor. But anyhow, that's what I reckon. What about you, fine folk at home? Be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do plug, subscribe, and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. That's the line, yeah. And have yourselves a wonderful rest of the week. Cheers, everyone. Love you.